Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the CoinGeek Weekly Livestream. I am your host, Mr. Wuckert Jr. Funny thing about doing live media is that it feels like the first time every time you do it. And so, so we are doing a good job. Everybody's doing a really good job. So everybody, live from sunny South Florida, where it's finally starting to get a little bit sunny. It's been a little bit gloomy the last couple days, but gotten a lot done. Actually, I've been spending my time with a few key people to work out a bunch of roadmap items, both internally and externally. Sort of the broader saving Bitcoin. There we go. My studio light wasn't on either. So doing the whole thing. And one of the key people that is helping us do the saving of Bitcoin is one Darren Kellenschwiler, which I think I've said correctly, but I'm always a little nervous every time I say it. Nope, he's shaking his head. I think I was close. I don't know. Part of the reason is that to me he is Deggen until all of a sudden I'm supposed to like introduce him as a real person. And then I'm like, oh shoot, where I've known him for 6 years now, I should get this. But anyhow, Deggen will be on in a few minutes. He's doing a bunch of really crucial stuff over at the BSVA, along with, frankly, some of my favorite people in the history of Bitcoin who have consolidated into places where I am really happy to see them, because it's good to have good people in good places to get good things done for the good of humanity. And that's where we're at. So if you could like, subscribe, hit the alert bell, especially if you're one of the people watching live, thank you so much. Without you, we would have nothing to do at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'd probably be putting peanut butter on toast and saying I should get a day job. And thanks to you, I get to do this, and it's pretty great. So please let everybody know that we are live. We will be taking comments live from the troll box. If you have stuff for me, stuff for Deggen, it'll be a good time to ask it. Most specifically about the direction of a lot of the ancillary software, the things in the penumbra of Bitcoin. So not necessarily all the way Bitcoin itself, but the like, what do I do with this? Is a lot Deggen's domain over at BSVA. And working on like toolkits, SDK stuff, the broader kits of stuff that make Bitcoin practical and actually put it in your hands. So if it's related to that, Deggen is the guy to ask, and it would be a good time. So also, if you are watching live and you have not checked, I just realized I didn't pin it yet, but I posted my article today about the future of work. The 9-to-5 job is dying. Almost everybody that I know who is a valuable person and who I work with is a contractor at this point. If you are working a salaried 9-to-5 position, statistically, you will not be in that position over the next 5 to 10 years. And you need to be thinking about yourself as an entrepreneur or a micro entrepreneur of sorts. And I kind of go into the economics of how I think work will look in a decade, and why the Uberization of everything has somehow made it that wages have gone down, and also profits among the companies that distribute this work are don't exist. So somehow there's not money being made by anybody in this Uberization of everything. And I have a theory, and that theory is that essentially the financial tools that underpin such systems are 30 years old, and they are not prepared to pay people the way that they need to be paid when they are working micro amounts of work. They should be paid in micropayments without all the fees and all the timing and all the other stuff. And also things like tokenized micro equity in the companies they work for, and those kind of things. So check it out. It's a little bit of my grand vision for the future, along with a little bit of nostalgia for when I was a teenager and thinking I'm going to have a job someday. And that just kind of never really happened. I'm just an entrepreneur by default forever. So, and you're going to be too. So prepare yourselves. We are going to cut to an ad. Our sponsors today, just like most days over the last year or so, are RockWallet. RockWallet being the simplest self-custody wallet in the ecosystem that also contains the ability to swap. So if you want to swap your BTC for your BSV, or you got some stable coins, you're one of those ETH people and don't want to tell your friends, you can keep all of those things in your Rock wallet and you can exchange them at will. And then also the Champions TCG folks who are so kind to give away a deck of cards every single week for a long time now. The guys are great. Please play Champions TCG. It is a real world business with real world customers using BSV as the backbone of their company, which is great because you can do the same thing. So let's cut to that RockWallet ad, and then we will be back with Deggen, who can start by going over again the pronunciation of his last name, which I should know by now. So we'll be right back. Hello, Darren. Please pronounce it for me. How do you say it?
Kellenschwiler.
Kellenschwiler. So it was close. I made to put a little twang on it. All right. Not crazy. It's like, Kurt, it's Williams. Why do you keep making this stuff up?
It's Deggen. It's always going to be Deggen, I think.
Yep.
Ask everyone to pronounce that made-up name.
That works. It's funny. It actually reminds me. So when people use their like hacker handles on stuff, reminds me of somebody many years ago asking Craig Wright about Phil Wilson. This has got to be 7 or 8 years ago, and they're like, what do you think of the? Is there any truth to the Phil Wilson story? And they're talking about Phil, and he's like, I don't know who that is. And nobody should listen to Scronty anyways. I was like, his handle though. It was like one of those. Oh, okay. Like, guess we found a live wire. So.
Like a Freudian slip.
A little bit. So, Deggen, my friend, let's talk a little bit about introduction stuff. I think your position has changed a little bit since the last time you were on the show. You were with BSVA then and are with BSVA now, but you are
one of the survivors of the purge. Yeah.
wearing a different hat. So let's hear about the new hat, please.
Yeah, so honestly, we were given a couple of options in terms of what we wanted to continue doing, and I felt like at the beginning of the year we were kind of halfway through this distributed applications vision that I had been working really hard to convince management to fund, essentially, and so I really didn't want to let go of that sort of half done. I wanted to see it through to the end to make sure that sort of vision is complete with respect to the open source libraries that we've been developing, the various components that come together to form the basis of this new service layer and ecosystem. So yeah, the new role is I mean, the management style is very different with the new team. It's a holacracy, and yeah, I really appreciate it. To be honest, it's kind of like you were saying in your intro there. Feels like everyone on the team is more of an entrepreneur, self-led. You're responsible to manage your own time, get everything done. There's a lot less structure, which at first was kind of like a productivity dip. And then it made me realize how much I was relying on my team for the ceremonies and the great work that they did over the last year. I was really leaning heavily on their organizational skills, and which I lack a little bit, but once you get over that hump, it's been super productive. I would say the main difference is just the pace at which things can be done once you agree, and once you're on the same page, things can happen very quickly. So
yep. Now it's one of those things. Like as I'm writing the article, and it started with me. Like I've been looking into that sort of Uberization work model myself, just to get familiar, because I've actually never done that. Like I never drove for Uber or delivered for Instacart or any of that. I was already sort of fully working in other things by the time that sort of economy existed. And then I watched a video about like, it's essentially this dystopian, like we're all just going to suffer and die. Like we're all going to become like these micro entrepreneurs that can't get ahead because they don't have to give you healthcare and they don't have to whatever. And the companies aren't making any money either. And it was just like this whole thing. And I realized, like, no, this is actually the world we've kind of been working for. I've been telling people to treat themselves like an entrepreneur, even if you work a 9-to-5 job. Like, the people that move up into, like, hey, I'm the regional manager, are people that treated it as an opportunity and got better at negotiating themselves into better position.
Stay hungry.
Yeah, and then it becomes more productive if you treat it that way. But it really is on each of us to, treat our job like it matters, like a businessman would treat his company like it matters. There's just a different little bit there. So
the motivations that we've been sort of setting ourselves more recently is purpose-led work.
Yep.
So always aligning back, thinking about, okay, you're organizing some project. Okay, you've got a specific technical problem that you want to solve, and then zooming out and thinking about, like, well, why do you bother getting up in the morning to solve this particular problem? And that's been extremely effective from my perspective. I have a young daughter, so I've been up at this morning at 4:20, not for my own purposes, but
relatable.
So motivating factor is like, oh, well, I'm up anyway, I might as well get started.
Yep.
But yeah, there's an element of that that's shifted slightly, in that it's clarified that underlying motivation that was always there, but now it's front and center, and it's like almost like a daily affirmation of, like, the project management suite we're using reminds us of that purpose every time we glance at our to-do list. Be like, got a to-do list, and it's important because this thing you want to do.
Makes a lot of sense. Speaking of things that make sense, I've been a big fan of the idea of big get-togethers and co-working with the people you like and these kind of things. We were going to try to get you out, but I know you've got the wife ready to give you another child any day.
She's
now.
Ready to pop. Yeah. She just had a checkup today. She's doing good, getting there any day now.
Yeah. Well, congratulations ahead of time. That's I've done it 3 times now, and it is both exciting and very stressful every time we've done it. So sending prayers, sending love. But
thanks, man. Preparing myself accordingly.
Yeah. No, it's the other part of that, like in the spirit of sort of co-working and getting groups together, there's a hackathon coming up in 2.5 months, something like that, in your neck of the woods, as I understand it too. So
in Austin, Texas. Yeah.
Let's hear a little bit about the hackathon. First of all, who birthed it? Whose idea? What's the topic? What are we doing?
Yeah. So it was essentially birthed, I think, out of partly an initiative from the BSVA's ambassador program. One of those ambassadors, the great and powerful Ty Everett, with his team Babbage. So he's making his way over to Texas. I'm not sure exactly why Texas, but I've always wanted to start a meetup here. Like I used to run the London meetup, and really why I've hesitated is I felt like we weren't quite there. We weren't quite there with a stack that I was proud of and could speak of with confidence, saying we're doing the right thing here. So it's taken a little while to just get aligned and align everything to that purpose. Because when you're seeing people in person, it's different from online, right? You can kind of sell things online. You can't really do that in person, or certainly I can't. I'm not a good salesperson if I don't believe in what I'm selling. So it's taken a while to get there. But so it's in Austin. Ty's really leading efforts there, along with Cress, who is on our team. Maria is a local friend of mine who is an ambassador also. She's got experience in marketing. Anas of Silverline is also involved as a sponsor, and is helping coordinate local things because he's nearby too. So yeah, it's been really great to just get into the mental zone of, like, okay, we're going back in now. We're kind of ready with this service layer, and we're going to start building businesses again. Because for so long, I've been tinkering with things like protocols and the SPB wallet stuff has really been my mainstay. But really, my passion is in distributed applications. I don't know if you recall Baymail, but that was what I was doing before.
You were an app dev. For a long time, I thought of you as an app dev. Yeah, for sure.
I've always told people at the BSVA, like, look, I'm here to solve this layer of the problem, get SPV into everything open source, and then I'm going to go build some more businesses because that's where my passion is. So we're approaching that inflection point where you really can start building out this stuff. But before I get into that, the BSV Hackathon, bsvhackathon.com is where you can go to find out information about the location and dates. It's the 5th of April and the 6th of April. That's a weekend.
Cool.
So 6 weeks away.
Nice.
And it's going to be great. There's a big prize pot. So if you want to get a head start, you can take a look at signing the getting registered to the developer forum. There's some questions you need to answer. There's a bunch of documentation. If you read the documentation and then fill out the form, you're going to be ahead of the game in terms of understanding the tech that you're going to be using in the hackathon. And by all means, front run it, start developing now. As long as you continue some work over that weekend, that's going to count towards the potential prize pool winnings. So I think it's 50K total prize pool. So it's a decent chunk of change.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So very exciting, and I'm honored to be one of the judges on the competition. I won't be competing. I think that's unfair because I've been reviewing all this tech stack. So but I'm going to judge the competition.
That's exciting. Especially Austin is such a cool city. Like there's a lot of very boring cities in the country. Austin's one of the ones that you land and has a culture. You're very much like, wow, I'm in Austin.
There's often a live band playing when you arrive in the airport, and it's barbecue straight away.
No, I remember being a very hipster part of town last time I was there. It's got to be a year and a half ago or something, and we're having coffee out on a like rainbow painted porch and whatever, and a lady cowgirl goes by with some longhorn cattle right down the street. So she's like driving cattle through and I'm like, wow, okay, that's the culture. That's the
culture.
That kind of thing is very, I love that. I love when a city has its own, just its own eccentricities. And Austin is, well known for being eccentric in general, but being very Austin. So it's very authentic in that way. So I'm excited.
Keep Austin weird is the motto.
Yes. Yeah, no. So I'm excited to see Austin. It's
that, and I mean, it's live comedy central these days. There's a great strip on 6th Street in the center. So if you're keen to join the hackathon, by all means, come a couple of days early and go see some live comedy as well.
That'd be great. No, it sounds like a blast. Yeah, it's a Chicago thing too. Is very much we're a tough city, but we got a really good comedy scene. So it's like kind of miss it.
You need it.
There is not comedy in South Florida. Everybody takes themselves a little too seriously.
Well, there's some great comedians from Florida, and they often visit Austin. So there's some good ones from there.
Makes sense. So just a little more about the hackathon. Like it's specifically about overlay services and that sort of thing. Can we?
Well, kind of. Yeah. So
please, like elucidate. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you take a look at the documentation, a lot of it's about overlays, but more broadly, I would say it's about this whole vision of standardizing the service layer of the BSV economy. So the idea is that anyone can spin up let's just say you have some protocol or smart contract idea. You can define that in code. You can set up an overlay service, which is just a server that runs specific rules. They have things called topic managers that will admit certain tokens and list them for lookup later, depending on rules that you set. You can imagine you can create a subset of transactions just by defining some rules, saying it has to look like this, and then it's part of that topic. So then you can spin up the first one, and then someone else can copy your code and spin up another one, and now you can have a distributed system where there are nodes popping up that facilitate a particular topic and allow people to look up services, as in look up tokens associated with that topic whenever they need them. And so very, very simply, you can spin up your own subset of the BSV blockchain that is specific for implementing whatever your grand idea is. So not all ideas require this I would say shared context. But for those that do, this is a really cost-efficient way to spin up a set of services that are just facilitating that without having to pay for the cost of running your own node, assuming that that would be the default behavior prior to all of this stuff.
For sure. Well, and it is. It takes a lot of unprogramming and reprogramming to get people to even think about it that way, and that's been a heck of a challenge. So
absolutely,
yeah.
So go on. I've got endless details to share, but I'd like
I just think like looking at like the way that we can build on Bitcoin, like this has been something we've tried to think through at Gorilla Pool. That's why we created Jungle Bus. Is like, okay, how do we start to just put more tools in people's hands? Now, when we started creating tools like that, it was during an era when I think it was Bitcoin Association was what it was called at the time, had a very different view on its sort of open source strategy and really just the whole thing. There kind of wasn't that application layer ethos. Like there were a lot of commercial ones, but including from Nchain and some of these other players had their own, like, here, use our tool and build therein, and our token standard and our stack. And I think
certainly
there were probably 7 or 8 groups of people that are saying, use my stack, use my tokens, like whatever, come our direction. And now a lot of that's consolidated, and BSVA, as it's now called, has a very different ethos about who to support, where to point people, and also like, hey, put tooling out there in public, make it open source and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through like what was that process in culture change? How much were you involved in it, and what do you think the sum total of that looks like over the next 18 to 24 months or something like that?
Whoa, that last one's tough, but I'll start with the easy ones.
Sorry.
So when I joined, I was the second technical hire. Jad Wahab was the first. He brought me along from Nchain because I was working with him on the kind of Skunkworks team that was slapping together the first SPV related code in Go. I would say that was the start of the process of I guess the realization that there might need to be standards out with the actual protocol. And I see it as, like, you can imagine, we all agree that having a fixed protocol is really useful because you can invest in developing software without it changing under you all the time, right? Yep. So BSV, one of the selling points is a fixed protocol. So now expand that idea out from this core and just say, okay, and now the service layer, if it also has a bunch of standardized protocols that at least some companies are going to support, then that's going to make it a lot easier for companies to develop their services on top of that. And I'm one of the competitors that was trying to do the service layer. I was trying, with ELAS, I was trying to get people to think in the way I thought that things should be built. And some precursor to an overlay type idea was Dagda. And I know that loads of other companies were doing things like that. And so as we were building out the sort of core library tools and trying to develop SPV and just for payments, really, is what we're doing for the first 2 years of this. That's when it became apparent that, actually, it's going to be a lot more valuable to just be opinionated about how these protocols click together. I was very reluctant to be opinionated. I was just like, well, everyone's ideas are equally valid. Go do your own thing. And realizing that really what was happening was all these ecosystem companies were writing code that was incompatible with one another. And our pie was getting smaller just for economic reasons and marketing reasons. And so we had a lot of duplication in efforts to try and solve the same problems.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of companies were doing things right. And we really tried to incorporate these companies and their developers into the fold, and try and say, okay, yeah, you're doing things right here. Let's make this the kind of official way to do things. And obviously that includes people that work with you, as well as others in the ecosystem who really worked hard at getting things right over the last 6 years or so.
Sure.
So one thing I wanted to clarify is kind of on topic here is SPV wallet. I still get questions about SPV wallet and its development track and what it is and when do I use it. I should say that the focus of SPV Wallet was to facilitate SPV payments only, right? So we had nothing that was doing SPV properly prior to SPV Wallet. We got that delivered. It allows you to pay using the standard, peer-to-peer payment mechanism, Paymail, plus Merkle paths being delivered server to server. That was the purpose of SPV Wallet. What ended up happening is we developed a standard that could then apply to all sorts of things. So the beef transaction format. So now our scope is expanding to the point where, and we're taking on a lot of things that the Babbage team developed a sort of version 0 of, and saying, great idea, let's do that for the whole ecosystem because that's a common problem. So now we have a situation where we're building SPV into every part of every HTTP request between all of the modules in a distributed application architecture, which means you can run part, I can run part, someone else can run another part, and they can all pay each other, just like you were saying in the intro, with these micropayments. And you get that ad hoc economy where in fact, it's really relevant for this AI stuff. In AI, you got every 2 weeks is a new model that comes out. And you have these subscriptions with these companies. That's really annoying because maybe you want to just try out Claude 3.7 because it's just out, but you don't want to commit. Right. And also Claude, Anthropic might have difficulties selling you the subscription because you already just bought Grok 3 or whatever. So how we can help that industry is we remove the subscription model whatsoever, and you just pay per prompt, and you could even pay per talk or whatever. In that context, and really nano payments. So that opens up a whole new competition where you're competitive on things like UX, because you can pay the people who provide the UI and the UX for prompting, because some people are better at that than others. And you can use that perhaps with any model in the background, and you pay the model separately. So then you can start having, specialists in, UI development for AI, and you can pay them appropriately. And they're not being bungled into these giant corporations that own everything. It's more like there could be an independent dev house that just happens to be great at figuring out what people want to use in terms of their UI. Or a particular aggregation of different models for different purposes, So that's an area where this huge applicability for all the stuff that we're working on in terms of micropayments.
Well, and that's kind of it's where everything is going, right? Like this, you mentioned Claude, and the latest version of it is, man, if you just have a basic understanding of how you want an application to work, you're getting real damn close to just being able to say, make me an app that does this and this and this and this, and it'll just bang your code out for you. And, you should probably have somebody audit it who knows what they're doing. But I don't know if that's going to be the case in a year, because it's really, really close at this point. And it allows things like, right now, UI UX stuff is done by people that have a mix of anything from like a fine art degree up to, hey, I'm a computer scientist, or like I do a little bit of both, that kind of thing. And it allows, hey, like you can literally just get like experienced curators from a museum to help you walk through your UI UX of a thing. Like just take someone who has no technical prowess and help me design the experience digitally here, and these kind of tools that then allow that. And like you said, this subscription model, it's like, hey, give me your credit card. We're gonna, and it's like, no, what if you could just pay 30, 40 cents or something to just kind of tinker in the system, like just pay for the compute that you're using for your idea. And it allows people to test the waters more than they would have certainly 5 years ago. But even, just moving forward, I think it's so obviously the way things are going and need to continue to go that,
it's maybe I see one roadblock potentially. I often think of venture capital and TAM, as in total addressable market, and that sort of conversation. Really, my only experience of that is pitching Baymail and trying to convince people that this was going to take off, despite there was only about 1,500 users or something like that at the time.
Yep.
And really, all the VCs were interested in how much, what kind of TAM can you capture? You know, what percentage of the TAM can you capture, and like how many users are yours? You know, users like drug users, kind of thing. I want to move away from that model and start treating people like human beings rather than just users of your thing. I think that might scare VCs, because I think they look at that and they say, look, this is a like monetizable user blob. And that's what I'm going to base my estimates in terms of ROI on. Whereas now what I'm saying is like, there's no guarantee, because you can't trap users. There's no vendor lock-in. The whole point is people can decide to use your platform for a single request and then never use you again.
Yep.
You know, so what I'm trying to do, what I think we ought to try to do, is bring the magic of Bitcoin mining to the service layer, because Bitcoin mining is hyper competitive, as you know, a Red Queen's game. So if you bring that kind of competition to the service layer, what gets better? The user experience, the value for the users gets better, because you're competing in UI, you're competing on the response time for your overlay services. Yours is faster than mine. People are just going to use yours like that. They're just going to switch immediately, just like people switch these AI models. But everything else as well. So, you know, if there's a cheaper service, just because it happens to run in an area where electricity is cheaper, that's where you're going to go. And it's just so much more efficient. Everything just gets cheaper and better for everyone in aggregate. That only works if people understand how that mechanism works and start to build stuff with it. So, I mean, that's why we need to talk about it more.
Venture, it's funny. The venture angle, I would have agreed with you probably 2 years ago. But more and more, even in doing my research about like the gig economy and all these things, like Uber, the company, hasn't ever made money. Like they've never made a profit. And so the only way that their company exists at all is they continue to raise funds from bigger and bigger sized venture capitalists. And like the idea is that eventually the company becomes profitable, or they, you know, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe there's some financial game that I don't understand where you could just lose money forever and that's a good thing. But I don't think that's the case. And I think we're starting to see increasingly like venture capital is spinning off to like create meme coins and things, because they need to pad the bottom line, because they're losing money on all these things they're investing in for exactly the reason you're talking about. Like they're like, oh, that's a good idea. We got to put some money in. We have to allocate money somewhere. But if none of it ever turns into real work, I think it's just one more aspect of the centralization that is just, it's becoming outmoded, where I think this is partially what I was talking about with like tokenized micro equity in my article, is that, hey man, if I'm going to be an Uber driver, maybe I allocate $50 a week into like, give me some equity, and that money becomes part of the underlying value in the company that is used by the corporate to do the thing. And like it becomes, hey, I didn't just pitch it to Sequoia and you know, whoever, Andreessen Horowitz or you know, whoever else is there. So I don't have like a cap table of 5 guys who I owe everything to, but I have maybe millions of people that are giving us $50 worth, you know, in trade for equity on a very regular basis, and that becomes a different paradigm and an accountability structure that is more democratized for everybody involved. So I think,
that would be super interesting, like voting shares at a micro level.
Yeah. So
very interesting concept.
Probably, maybe, I don't know.
Or well, you know, possible as well. I mean, what restricts IPOs at that level these days, other than financial regulation? I just mean like practical limitations. It's like, well, it's just too expensive to organize all of the contracting. Basically, is the expensive part, is my understanding. So if we can get that down into, you know, Ricardian contracts or something like that, maybe we can reduce the cost to do that. Do exactly. Imagine.
I agree. It's something I think is going to be explored anyways. And really this started 5 years ago. This was like the Ethereum ICO concept and that kind of thing is, you know, they're trying it. And I think it's largely been tried by scammers and crooks, which, you know, is, I guess, how most things start in tech, but it's, you know, we got
That's right.
Gotta get the
outlier confidence people with malicious intent potentially.
Indeed. So we got another couple of things that you wanted to cover, probably from the BSVA.
I'm glad you have a list because I don't remember.
So one of them was like distributed application architecture stuff, like going over like what is available today. Like my
That's
team is
right.
the Go SDK stuff we're partial to because we put it together, but there's lots of new toolkits over the last probably 6 to 12 months. There's a lot of new stuff to get familiar with. So maybe if you want to go over like hierarchy, but like, hey, I'm a new dev, I'm pretty good at some stuff, but I don't understand BSV. Where do I go, Deggen?
Let me melt your brain with like a million links.
Let's do it.
That's happened many times over the last little bit. I'm trying to find my list. So like new repositories that some people might not even know of, right? So there's overlay services that's been around for a while. I should mention that as we develop these things, they're going to go stale as we build the new thing, and then we're going to come back and just align everything because it's like a progressive process. So some of these things they're starting to go stale because of the new stuff we're developing. We can go back and make sure they're all aligned. But the new ones that I really want to mention that not a lot of people know about are Wallet Infra and Wallet Toolbox. So there are a couple of NPM libraries associated with them as well. So these are built in TypeScript. Wallet Infra. I did a little video with Tony Engel, and he walked me through the setup of the Wallet Toolbox stuff. But it just kind of assumes that you have Wallet Infra running. So Wallet Infra is kind of like you can imagine it's just like a cloud backup. Jad used to call this, when we were talking about early versions of this, Jad used to call it a bit cache. The idea is that it's your transactions, you're just putting them on a server somewhere, and it's a database, it's yours, and you can pull them back. So it's way beyond that like initial idea. It's way more advanced than that these days. But that's the key idea, is it's cloud backup for all of your transactions, all of your private metadata. And the cool thing is it's already integrated with the mutual authentication and payment middleware. So what that means is there's a couple of packages that are now available too, which allow you to use an Express middleware injection, which Express is a really popular Node.js server. So it's basically, if you have some sort of API and you're using Node.js, often it'll be Express based. So you can now just say app.use auth or app.use payment with these two packages. And what that does is it handles all the complexity of how do you communicate to the client, like who you are as a server, like who's operating the server, confirm who they are, and you can set your own rules for like who you allow to use your API, and then charge per request how much you want to charge. So you can imagine, whatever, I think 200 Satoshis is the default, but you can go as low as 1 if you want. And so the wallet infrastructure uses this. So you can set up a wallet infrastructure today. You can spin that stuff up in a Docker container or a Kubernetes cluster or G-Cloud or AWS, whatever you want. And you can start charging people to store their transactions on their behalf. Now, you just spin it up. And
business opportunity. Yeah,
absolutely. And so one of the cool features of the client side for that is this wallet storage manager, and what it allows you to do as, say, like a mobile app running wallet. It didn't show up because it's background. Mobile app running the wallet toolbox components, the client-only toolbox. What you can do is have your private keys on that, and you can generate transactions, payments between mobiles. And then every time you need to store the transaction, you can sync not just to one, but to an array of storage providers. You can pay them all each a couple of Satoshis here and there. So now you have like redundancy. You can drive over your phone and it's no big deal because you have all these backed up metadata and transaction services that you're paying for. So the reason this is so different to the sort of status quo is with, say, popular explorers for BSV, You have free storage for transactions, right?
Yep.
The problem with free is it's unsustainable long term, and somebody's paying for it, right? And if it's not you, then you can't guarantee it's going to be there for you one day. And certainly there were 10 explorers back in the good old days, and now there are a handful, one or two.
Yep.
So anyway, that's the big difference, is you're actually paying for a service, and it's using the thing that BSV does that nothing else does, which is tiny little micro transactions, micropayments.
Yep.
And it's all built into HTTP. When I heard your conversation with Mike Hearn last week, I was screaming at my screen when he mentioned I would be building micropayments into HTTP.
Yep.
I'm like, that's what we did.
Right.
We just did it.
No, it's actually I did the same thing. Like, as he started saying it, I was like, oh, I wonder who's watching, because I knew there would be a few people who'd be like, that's
what we're doing.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about, he seemed very, Mike specifically seemed generically, advocating for that sort of metanet style, this whole thing, like, oh yeah, cool, transactions instead of internet packets. And to him, it all seemed very clear, which was refreshing. But let's, you released a tool the other day, and you were talking about, more like, what is the next step on stuff like that? Internally, we've been spent a couple of days talking about like OrdFS and some of these other things, like recursive, like, well, the ordinal is the domain and it's served from the chain, and it's all, so you start getting this, it's the World Wide Web can be run from the blockchain, sort of. So what do you
it's funny, because I mean, when I first started getting into BSV development really seriously, full time, that's one of the first things I did was, B protocol, injecting HTTP pages and all their assets, and we had a messnet resolver that would get the most recent version of a website, and so on. I think that's what David has been doing over the last couple of months as well, or at least exploring with that sort of stuff, which is just great. So what's next was the question, I think. So the last phase of development that's sort of strictly planned includes something which I've been referring to as identity resolution overlay. And really all that is kind of a reverse lookup to get from attributes about a person to a public key that they have associated those attributes to. So like, if I have your phone number, I should be able to pay you. If I have your email, I should be able to pay you. And for the longest time, we've been using Paymail for this, and using DNS. And the overlay solution to this problem is the identity resolution service. So I don't want to get into the details of what we're doing there, because some contracts need to be signed to proceed. Sure. So I'll just wait, just in case there's issues there. Yep. But the general idea, I think, is well spoken about publicly, and I don't think that's an issue. So the experience needs to be wrapped together. So all these components exist now. Hypothetically, you could take them and build stuff, but we want to make it like ludicrously easy for just general, full stack developers to just pick this stuff up and be building useful things immediately. So a lot of it is about wrapping up some of these libraries into sort of example applications. So that's the next phase. We have some work that's to do with wrapping up the wallet toolbox components and adding some things like permissions management, authentication. Like at the moment, you could seed a wallet with just a private key. That means that you would have to copy paste your private key into all of the different devices. So one of the services that doesn't exist yet that we would like to build is a sort of a service that allows you to use the same private key without actually ever touching the private key yourself, using like a key threshold system, let's say. And sure. And that should work across multiple devices. And if you lose your phone, no big deal. You have recovery routes and things like that. So all that stuff is on the roadmap, and this sort of missing piece to make it super easy for everyone to use. So,
Yep. No, which is key, right? I mean, that's so,
keys are
you know,
key.
well, it's funny. One of the things that we were talking about over the last few days, we had David and Luke and Dan and a few guys all out, and we were kind of planning on the, like, hey, how many things can we be syncing together, and all, all these broader, like you said, like, well, yeah, if I lose my keys, like, why should they be gone forever? Even, not even your typical cypherpunk, like, yeah, man, you got to have your backups buried in the backyard or whatever. But some of these other, like, things like that, they're like, hey, it's a peer-to-peer network, but if we have multiple levels of peer-to-peer network that aren't used for everything, but they could be used as a backup, essentially a cache on all kinds of information. So we're talking about, like, syncing things up and down the stack too, that, like, you can't rely on the sync. Like, the main problem is, people treating their node like their node needs to be serving them everything, and that's not really the case. But you do need something to be able to serve you something when you need it. That's that's a problem that is not well defined or well solved as a solution. And so we were going over some ways to practically solve those problems too. But it's funny that 15 years into the Bitcoin experiment, it's just like, oh.
Yeah, we're still figuring some stuff out, and I would say that, like, there are some aspects of Electrum X that I appreciate now that I didn't at the time, a couple of years ago when I was working with RT on Electrum SV. And part of that is the distributed nature, as in there are multiple providers and you can select them, and if one goes down, no big deal, you just use another one, kind of thing. The thing that Electrum X was lacking is economics. Like, on two fronts. It was too expensive to run with big blocks, and it was not really performant enough and not worth upgrading. But also, like, the clients weren't paying for it, and now we have a framework where the clients can pay for it. So hypothetically, we could go back to that now, but I think we've moved beyond it in terms of not needing to do the global indexing that Electrum X servers were doing, and therefore being able to have, like, appropriate services. So for example, like, I can set up a service that I know it is performant enough for my business use cases, and everyone can do the same thing in some sense. Or you can pay for different levels of service, just like you can pay for different size of AWS machine if you're spinning up a new service.
Yeah. Let's. I just realized we only have about 12 minutes left here in the show, which is crazy to me. But the question here from the audience: does the winner of the hackathon get to keep the developed software? Is there a percentage contract? Is there any kind of offer at the end of this thing, or is it literally just, hey, build a thing, we'll pay you if you win, and it's your software?
It's definitely your software in terms of copyright. One of the rules is that, part of the purpose of the hackathon is to develop open source example applications using the libraries and components that have been developed. So libraries and components are all open BSV licensed, and so too would any of the submissions within the hackathon time period. So you've got 2 days of open source development. Obviously, then you are free to fork that and go do your own private version of that.
Sure.
If it's a really great idea, if you win the prize, you should absolutely feel free to continue development from there in a commercial proprietary sense. That would be up to you, because you'd still own copyright.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had to bring this one up because we spent a lot of time talking about this yesterday. Why is there no bonding curve token contract on BSV for the degens?
Oh,
and
go on.
You and I need to talk. So we actually, okay. I think I came up with a very novel way to have an AMM DEX on BSV without any compromise on the how-tos. So there's it's really cool, including this bonding curve token contract concept and a bunch of other things that are pretty typical in the Solana ecosystems and stuff like that. But for a lot more than just degen trading, I think we've actually come up with some very interesting stuff for, like, decentralized onboarding and offboarding and trade and all of that kind of stuff. But very interesting ideas come up with just doing shooting our shot, I'll say, to keep it PG-13, I guess. But yeah, no, but that kind of thing, I think this is why I like these ideas of hackathons and really just getting smart people that already stand Bitcoin. Like, you understand the predicate stuff. And then it's like, okay, now we got these tools, and now it's about our apps and business opportunities. And I have not been so bullish in about 5 years, where I think it was a lot of personalities and ego and other stuff that everybody was like, this is what BSV is about. And I think if you're still here, it's much more like, hey, I actually believed in the vision and the tech, and I'm here to use it. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
really proud to be part of all of this with you and the others that have stuck it out. We are the few
the last standing
ones, as it were.
The crazy ones. Yeah. I like what you said before, the visionaries. We stuck true to the or perhaps we understood what it was about in the same way that others in the ecosystem understood what we were doing. And sometimes you think you understand something, and it actually turns out it's not what you thought it was. And for me, it turns out that BSV, it is exactly what I thought it was, and it still is, and nothing's really changed from my perspective. It's always just driving towards that same goal. And I've certainly made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I could have been a lot better in hindsight at a number of things, but certainly I feel very positive about the future. I mean, this stuff that we've been working on is just, it's going to be lighting the fuse of a rocket ship. It's going to be so good.
Yeah, which it leads to this question. Profitability speaking, is BSV actually entrepreneur friendly? I get the digital plumbing aspect, but I feel like I'm missing something. And I think while traditionally, you can look at, like, I can name you a dozen businesses that have failed. Probably name you 30 to 50 if I really sat and kind of thought about it. But conceptually, I think, and you said it earlier, if we go back 5 years, I think a lot of us were like in like a bit of a protocol cult discussion, and you still kind of see it, where the people that just want to talk about the, like, well, I was in the trenches for the, I remember fighting about SegWit, and I remember fighting about whatever, something that happened in Bitcoin Cash, or and all this stuff, and it's like right, any number of things, including in BSV, a little bit the, like, hey, should we, like, what order do we do X, Y, and Z in? And should we use
Nardar is extremely controversial, right?
There you go. And like, people, like, we have this tendency to be protocol cults, and I mean that in a way that is not critical necessarily, but it's very much the, like, and you still see it a little bit with, like, the token people. So you kind of, right now, you have your STAs and your tokenized and your one sat people who all generally think the other group is wrong for all kinds of reasons of, well, if you think about, like, let me get the whiteboard out. And I think at this point, if you have to get the whiteboard out to explain why your idea is good or bad, you might not be having a valuable conversation at this point, because as the tooling, I think, has become more sophisticated, it's become more easy to use. And ultimately, to answer the question of this guy, New York engineer, that, I've been saying for 5 years, if you have a payment friction problem or a data integrity problem that you can sell to other people, then you have Bitcoin BSV as a solution. But practically that was not the case, because it was very unclear what stack of tools, like how do I build my idea? And that was a mostly unsolved question. And I think today that's a mostly solved question, or at least solvable question, given what's there. And so I'll iterate it again. Like, do you know somebody that's got, like, a major remittance problem that is sick of paying $5 to $50 fees per interaction that might be better at a 10,000th of a cent? And if that's a business case that you know of, that can be solved very practically with BSV as the underlying tech. And you can build an app that looks like MoneyGram or Western Union to the user, but is using very, very modern plumbing that Western Union isn't talking about yet,
and compete with.
Right. And that's just one example of any of the thousands of things that are, hey, we're talking about undercutting the market by 99.99999%. And you got to come up with that business idea though, to the New York engineer asking the question. Like, I can't be your entrepreneur, but but that's, that it's much easier to do a thing now. And I think I go back and forth on this, whether or not to tell the customer that it's even a blockchain application, right? Like, do you just save them the money and move on? Or
probably. That's probably what I do these days. I would guess, like, so the thing that you're missing in that question, or the thing that New York engineer was missing maybe, is the opportunity is that since you're in this conversation, you probably know stuff about BSV and its capabilities that not a lot of people know. The opportunity in entrepreneurship, from my perspective, is just asymmetric information. So if you are going deep on the tech, it works, it's insanely cheap. And the only sort of difficulty you're going to have is the marketing side of things. So, from the attack that has been raging against BSV for so long, regardless of why you think that attack is happening, it has been happening. We're not delusional. We understand that that's happening. But the thing from my perspective is that it doesn't matter. The people that are left are the people who realize that it doesn't matter what people think about the thing. It matters what it really is. And it does work. So, as long as you're an entrepreneur that knows how to sell the business you're building on top, and you can cope with the marketing navigation you're going to have to do, I think there's still a massive opportunity for BSV-based businesses. It is a blessing in disguise to some degree. Yeah, Crypto Spartacus is saying. Yeah, because if you're still here, you're one of those rare people who can, filter out all of the negative ads or whatever.
Right. Well, and just to see an opportunity for what it is. I mean, that really is it. Asymmetric information seems crazy to everybody until all of a sudden, it's like, if all of a sudden we're all very successful, you're going to get your Twitterati and these type of people who are, I always held on to I didn't split my coins. I always knew it could be a big deal, and it's like, we're not going to, nobody's going to congratulate us at the end of it all. They're all just going to say, oh, of course. That's obviously scalable blockchain was a good idea, So, but it is, it's one of those things that, it'll look obvious in hindsight, just like the, Uber or whatever, or Airbnb, which, these kind of things are like, oh yeah, cool. You had 20% of your home you just didn't use, and you could turn it into a rentable space. Like, that's such an obvious thing to do. And it's, I grew up in the era of don't talk to strangers. Everyone's gonna like kidnap and molest you, and it's like, to how many people's houses have I slept in now where it's just like, hi, I'm Kurt. Like, hi, I'm whoever. And like, we've got this little single serving relationship where I sleep in their house for a day or two.
Very transactional. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just very passe now. It seems obvious. Right. So, but that's how the world changes.
Well, hopefully one day it's going to seem obvious that you would put payments into the headers of HTTP requests.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is. I think there's, today there's maybe 50 of us on Earth that think so. But
I think so.
It's I don't know. I think it's pretty obvious. One last thing. So you had another thing on the list that we had pre-discussed, this micropayments auto fetch class. Is this something that you want to touch on, dig into?
Auth fetch. We've discussed it, but if you're looking at the TypeScript SDK and you're like, where is this payment stuff? Auth fetch is the name of the class in the TypeScript SDK that allows you to make HTTP requests that include payment. So that's where to look in the code if you're a dev. That's the client side, and at BSV/payment express middleware is the server side equivalent.
Cool. Well, we're
also go to bsvhackathon.com.
Yes. Well, and let's talk about is there a single website that people can just kind of navigate to and see like what the heck is available? Like we have a troll box full of people who are either trolling or they are interested in what's actually going on here. So like, is there a single place they can just say like, what the hell stack do I use?
So yeah, yes, they should go to docs.bsvblockchain.org. I'm responsible for maintaining parts of that. We've got an education team that's up to speed on that now and is adding content and curating things. I'm a little overwhelmed with the amount of outstanding work there is to do with respect to filling in for all of my colleagues who have moved on to greener pastures. So it's just taking me a longer time to write this stuff out in documentation. But I think the most comprehensive stuff on the topics we've been discussing is going to be on the Hackathon website. It's the reading material of the Hackathon website, which I didn't produce. It's Thai stuff, but that's going to be the closest to what we've been discussing so far.
Cool.
And I will get on updating our public roadmap. GitHub is where the public roadmap is going. It's 50% done there, probably 60% done now. So yeah, this week I'm going to continue working, and by the end of the week, hopefully it'll be there.
Cool. Any other closing thoughts? Can be about anything in the universe. You've got you have the microphone and all the people in the universe watching, Deggen.
Adopt micropayments and produce more children.
Yes. You know what? I like that. Let's etch that on chain. That's good stuff. Deggen, thank you, sir. I intend to see you in April, so I'm looking forward to all of that.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
All right, sir.
Thanks, Kurt. Always a pleasure.
Been a pleasure. Talk soon.
Take care.
All right. So everybody, let's see if we can snag a comment of the day here. I'm hoping the producer is finding a goodie, and while he does, send me a private message, Mr. Producer. But I just wanted to address this question because God's son, you're somebody whose comments I see on the regular, and I appreciate them because this show is not about just painting rosy pictures. I like to think I'm pretty frank and pretty honest with everybody about the struggles and the victories. But he's saying, bro, imagine seeing how long crypto has been around, how much insanely wealthy these other chains, coins, and tokens have become, but BSV is poor. It all makes no sense. I agree, it makes no sense. And the fact of the matter is that we have lived during an era of incredible and increasing madness in the world. And I think that madness has been largely based on bad money, bad policy, and bad people taking advantage of bad systems. And I think we're seeing a big turn on that theme, in that the change that we're seeing is that bad money is drying up and bad people are running out of people to quote unquote launder that bad money. And I think things are starting to change. Now, they're not going to change all the way. We're not going to turn everybody into a good person, but I think we are starting to see like a world that is going to appreciate honesty once we have done a pretty serious purge of the sexiness of dishonesty. And so prepare yourselves. That's coming. So we're going to do the comment of the day. I believe Mr. Producer has chosen one, and he will play the thing, and then we're going to show the winner. So who do we got? Reminds me of like the lotto tumbler. Like, you remember the old like ping pong balls with numbers, and you do that. This is a good comment. So New York Engineer, if you could reach out to the real CoinGeek account on X and have a hand cash wallet ready, we will get you a full deck of cards from Champions TCG, who has been so kind to sponsor the show ongoing. You are a delightful group of people, and really kicking a lot of ass out there, showing people how to do real business. It's another good example of hey, they've got physical cards and physical stores and real clientele that buy their stuff, give residual income via micropayments to the stores that sell their content, and they are using the blockchain for things like simple dice roll and tokenizing the card assets within the game. And otherwise, it's a TCG style, card game that people are very familiar with, just playing in real life. So it is this merging of digital and physical in such a way that it is very discoverable for your average person and very discoverable for your tech nerd, your token person who's like, oh, well, let's see how this actually works. And they're like, oh, cool. It's a Bitcoin wallet. And really, really great stuff. I think they're a great example of a real business that's doing cool things. And I think people could learn a lot from the way they're pursuing it. So everybody, we're about 5 minutes over the hour. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your viewership. Your subscriptions, your likes, everything really helps us, helps me, keep it all together, keep holding the fort down here for Bitcoin. Everybody, you are the best. I appreciate you. And get out there, go do some good in the world. Send prayers out to the people that are working on, getting better, feeling better, doing better. And ultimately, let's all be good to each other, because if we can't do that, then the rest of it probably isn't worth it anyways. So everybody, I'm Wuckert Jr. wishing you a delightful rest of the week. And I will see you next week on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the CoinGeek Weekly Livestream. If you want to join us, please reach out to the Real CoinGeek account on X to get booked as a guest. You will get to the front of the line if you are an entrepreneur with a really cool idea. So everybody, see you next week.